Hello everyone, welcome to Screeniversity. Today we are going to discuss one of the most critical aspects of screenwriting, the first 15 pages. While you are, many of you might have tried this, but while you are trying to, pitch your scripts to different producers or agents or whatever, the first thing that you will learn in any screenwriting class or any screenwriting tutorial online or whatever is that the first 15 to 20 pages are really critical. Why is it so? Because those are the opening scenes of your film. When the opening scenes fail to impress you, people just walk out. They will not have the patience. So it's very important that you deliver that punch, that critical mass in the first 15 to 20 pages, and roughly you know that one page is equal to 1 minute. So that is where you actually deliver you win over your audience. That's where the punch is delivered. Now, keeping all that in mind, today we are going to discuss two different types of opening scenes. First one is Saving Private Ryan, released in 1998, directed by Steven Spielberg and written by Robert Rodat. So why is this scene great? I think no discussion about screenwriting and opening scenes can be complete without the mention of Saving Private Ryan. It is possible, in my opinion, it is the greatest opening scene of all time. There are many reasons for it. First of all, it is the scale. The scale at which the opening scene was shot is just mind-blowing. You will not believe for the first 25-26 minutes the way they take you onto a horror trip. The way you feel tortured, your soul feels tortured. It's just unbelievable. Now we'll not talk about direction aspects here because Steven Spielberg is a genius. We all know that there's barely anything left to say about him. But what we will discuss today is the first few lines or the first few pages of that script. So here, as a writer, what I observed is, how do you maintain the focus on the prime character in spite of having so many things happening at the same time? So let me describe that scene to you. So what happens is there are American soldiers there are scores of, hundreds of American soldiers who are heading towards the Omaha beach, and each boat has dozens of soldiers lined up. They are with their guns and waiting for imminent death or imminent facing the enemy, and they are everybody's shaking, shivering, everybody's scared, and there is a bit there's a 40-45 second delay where they only show the expressions of the soldiers, and the battle sounds are playing in the background. They don't show any explosions or any kind of enemy related activity. They only show their faces. That, I think, is just brilliant screenwriting. And among those, many soldiers are vomiting, they are seasick, and they just know that they are going to die. Among those hundreds, suddenly they show one hand shaking like this, and he takes that water bottle and takes a drink out of it and gives instructions to his soldiers. That's how they establish the central character of this Tom Hanks. Now this happens in the first minute. Now what happens after that? They show battle scenes. Okay, they show mortars flying everywhere. There are people losing their leg, losing their hand. There is blood everywhere. There are bullets on the boat, bullets under the boat. There are bullets in water. People just go inside water to escape, but the bullet comes and hits there, and the sea water turns red because of the blood. There is so much terror that is shown. There is so much it's just horrible. I cannot just explain because I don't know how they made that scene, but it's just really difficult to describe. So there is so much war going on. Okay, there's absolute chaos there. Then again, they show they are very particular about some of those things. Let's say there's a guy walking and suddenly there's an explosion, he loses a leg and his leg is flying somewhere. Then there is another scene where a guy is just walking, American soldier is walking, then he loses one hand. Then you feel terrified that he loses his hand. Then the next moment what happens? He picks up the broken hand with the other hand. Now that is spine chilling. That is some really great screenplay. Now after that, till for the next 4 minutes this chaos continues, and in the 5th minute they show Tom Hanks again. So that means the story, the movie has been all over. They show all types of explosions, all types of bloodshed. On the death is imminent. But again, to establish focus on the prime character, they again show Tom Hanks. And there is also comedy in this. I don't know how the screenwriter thought of this, but while they are, people are getting killed and people are losing hands and legs and all that, there is a guy holding some kind of briefcase or some equipment, and Tom Hanks asks him, what the hell is that? And he says it is some medical equipment and all that. He said, then Tom Hanks says, get rid of that crap and get yourself some weapons and follow me. That is just brilliant sarcasm. I don't know how you could fit in there, but only some great writers can do it. I mean, it's just unbelievable. And then the first thing that is there to learn from this scene for amateur writers or people writers who are just starting off is that do not attempt this. Don't attempt to write anything like this. But there are individual lessons you can take because there is so much that depends on direction. Okay, you might write something, but the director may not be able to pull off what Steven Spielberg could. Okay, so even if you want to introduce many characters, for example, in this opening scene, there are hundreds of characters. You have absolutely no idea. I mean, you will go insane if you've not watched this film. I'm telling you, you will go insane at the kind of scale that this film was shot on. Especially that scene. I've read somewhere that Steven Spielberg actually used physically challenged people for those scenes where people lose their hands and legs. When they literally, there's a mortar or bomb or whatever, it comes and falls and the guy loses his leg just like that. It's just unbelievable. When there is directorial talent backing for scenes like this, then it is very easy to write. But however, what lessons can be learned here? The first thing is that in spite of having so many characters, so much chaos going, the writer does not lose focus on the central character. This is what is very, very important. Okay, now if you see any popular blockbuster movie, either Hindi or Telugu or English or anything, especially hero oriented mass movies, the first few minutes are simply dedicated to introducing the hero. So all efforts are culminating into giving that grand entry to the lead character, and then there is a song or whatever. But this is different. There is so much chaos. Every other event in that scene is bigger and highly, it is much more significant and much grander in scale when compared to the lead character. However, because of the writing and the directorial talent, they do not lose focus on the primary character. Now that is one important lesson you can learn. So in the first 3 or 4 pages, if you want to show more events, if you want to write more about the surroundings or the action part, if you want to write, but do not lose focus on the lead character. That's one very important lesson you can learn from this. And then there are so many shades. Okay, first of all, they showed some of the soldiers sick. There is despair that is shown. Then in the middle somewhere there is that comedy scene. It's not comedy exactly, but it's slightly, it comes as a relief. You are watching, you are shocked, you are looking at the horror, then suddenly you feel slightly better because of the thing he says to that medical equipment guy. So somewhere there is a very nuanced balancing act taking place, and that's why the screenplay is pure genius. And other than that, there is one part where there is a huge explosion near Tom Hanks, okay, and he goes completely silent. His ears start ringing. It's like everything is kind of like slow motion. It appears like slow motion, but it's like complete chaos. He is lost completely. And then for I think for one minute or 1.5 minutes, this silence continues. He doesn't know what to do. Then how they pull back into reality, how they pull back to reality from that state of suspended numbness, suspension or numbness, is they show a guy talking and Tom Hanks can't hear anything, and he's continuously talking, but this guy can't hear anything because his ears are ringing. Then suddenly, in a flash, okay, he suddenly begins to hear that. I don't know how to write that scene. I don't know how they wrote it, but it is just absolutely brilliant. So when you are dealing with scenes of such large scale, there are a few things that you need to keep in mind. Let's just revise them. One is never lose focus on the central character. If you want to write a lot of action part, do write, but keep in mind that none of this should be deviating from your focus, and you should also have directorial talent backing that up. Okay, you might write something but the director will show something else. That is not actually good for you obviously. And how do you end such a scene? How do you end such a scene? So I've told you in one of my previous videos that any task, okay, basically any script or movie has a primary character, okay. He's the protagonist and he has a goal. From point A, he has to reach to point B. And there is an obstacle. In this case, Tom Hanks is the protagonist. He has to, along with many others, but however, he's still the main protagonist. He has to reach, infiltrate the enemy lines, not infiltrate, just cross the enemy lines and go and save whatever. That's the rest of the plot. But his obstacle right now is those continuous shelling from the German side. So how do you end such a scene? So the first 15 pages, okay, obviously whatever your opening scene is, it cannot end in 50, it cannot go on forever. It has to end somewhere. So those first 15 pages or 15 minutes of screenwriting that you're talking about has to have a logical end. So that's the first lesson. Treat your first 15 minutes as a different film altogether. When you treat it as a different film, you get to focus on each aspect and you take that arc, okay. There is a guy who has a goal and there is an obstacle. This guy overcomes that obstacle. So basically that's exactly how every Hindi or Telugu film is. But when you get into nuanced, when you try to understand nuances of that, you will notice that the first 15 to 20 minutes are actually an individual film altogether, okay. And that film will determine the rest of your film. So keep that in mind. Don't attempt too much chaos. If you attempt too much chaos, what will happen is that you will lose focus on central character, which is not in your best interests. And keep an eye on the budget, because whenever you write a screenplay and you're about to submit, many of those forms on those websites have information about how much budget you are thinking. In one of my scripts called My Grandpa is a Gangster, I just randomly wrote it because I had no idea how much it will cost and all. So I just wrote like 500,000 or $1 million. But when it went for an evaluation, it came back saying that this cannot be done in $1 million because there are too many action scenes. So if you are a screenwriter, please also keep in mind how much money you are going to spend on every scene, and based on that you write. If you are writing a spec script, just go crazy. You have your freedom. But what I'm saying is, I'm not saying that you should limit your scenes or creativity based on what the budget is available. If you're writing a spec script, you don't have to do that. What I'm saying is that you should be aware. If at any point of time somebody says how much this scene will cost, as a writer you should have a rough estimate. I know it's not your job, it's the producer or line producer's job, or that's a different science altogether, but you should know how much money roughly it will cost, because that will keep you in control of your script, and that way you can say. Now suddenly, for example, you wrote a scene which requires an aeroplane, but there is no budget for an aeroplane later on, then that's a problem, right? So yeah, think about that. So that's one movie that we discussed today, Saving Private Ryan. So I hope you all like this episode. Thank you very much. Bye bye.